Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Unit 1. We're still in Unit 1 and Lesson 4, practical side. In the previous video, we talked about the presentation in the keynote. We explored the different scenarios you can use if a statement and the switch statement, the logical operators. Today, we're going to practice all of that in the playground. So let's get started. In the first example, we're going to do a simple if statement. All right, and now what we're going to do, in the example that we have temperature, let temperature equal to 100. And then we say if temperature greater than or equal to 100, then we print it is very hot, or the water is boiling. All right. And so if you run this, what will happen here basically is that you will get the water is boiling at the end. The playground is still running. So this is the last statement that we have. And then you get the water is boiling here, right? And then you can also inspect the result here. We've done that before. You can see the result here, the water is boiling. Now, this condition only happens if this is a true. So the result will always happen. The only will happen. You'll see this only if it is true. So if the condition changes, if the temperature now is not 100, it's 80, for example, and then you run again this code, you'll notice that you're not going to get anything. You will not get the temperature is boiling. Why? Because this condition is false. And the only time you're able to get into the body of the if statement, we call this is the body of the if statement. Again, I'm using keyboard. Okay. So the body of the if statement, if this condition is true. So that's a simple if statement. The next example we're going to take a look at is the if else statement. So we're going to do if else statement, which is very similar to the previous one. So I'm going to copy this again. Command copy. And then we paste it here. And then instead of just a simple if statement, we have else statement here. And then we say else print the water is not boiling. Is not boiling. All right. So in this example, how is this different than the previous example? So first we check this condition. If it is true, it will do this. Otherwise, if it is not true, it will go to the else statement and does the else statement. That's the difference. So now if I run this previous example, we still have it. So I can just comment it out if I don't need to right now, just to, if I want to comment this out, what you do is that you just simply do /star and /star. So now this code is commented out. It will not take effect in our program. So what will happen now here? If you run this, it will look. If I run this part, it will say, it will check the temperature. Is the temperature 80? Now remember, we made that is equal to 80. Is 80 greater than or equal to 100? It is not. So what will happen? It will go to the, it will not do this part. It will go to the else statement and it will print the water is not boiling. All right. So that's the second example. And the next example that we're going to do, it's going to be we did the if else, we're going to do the Boolean values. All right. Okay, so let's add another comment here. Okay, so we're gonna say this is Boolean values. And in here, we're going to say let number, some number equal to 100 or 1,000 in the example that we did before. And then we can say let large is a small number, is a small number equal. Here we have the condition. Remember, the condition is number less than 10. If it is less than 10, it will print what? This will become true. But in this case, number is 1,000, so it's not less than 10. So false will be stored in this variable. So if I run this part, you'll notice that small number is false here. Do you see that? Now, if I change this, if I made this is instead of small number, if I change this to 3 or to 2, now what will happen? This one actually will change to true now, and then true will be stored in this variable here. So if I click on that, you'll notice here it became true. Not only you could do this with just numbers, you can actually have variables, you compare variables as well, and then the result of this comparison will be stored in another variable, in another variable. So for example, in the other example we have, we say let speed limit if I can type this morning equal 65, and then let's say let current speed equal 72, and then we can compare is speeding. Okay, so let is speeding equal, we say if the current speed is greater than the speed limit, then this will give you the answer, is that person speeding or not. So this is going to evaluate to true. Why? Because 72, the current speed is 72, and then the speed limit is 65, and then you will get true. Now, if I change this to a smaller number, instead of 75 to 60, this will give you false. All right, so that is the Boolean variables. All right, we've used Boolean variables before. You can assign them true or false, or you can assign them a condition as well. All right, so the next example that we had in the presentations, we talked about Boolean not operators. Okay, the not operator Boolean variables. So how do we use this not operators? In the example that we have, for example, var is snowing equal false. So here's another example of a Boolean variable. And then you can say if not is snowing. This is the example that we have. Then what do? We say print it is not snowing. So we say print it is not snowing. All right, so if I run this part, it will print it is not snowing. Why? Because even though this is false, but because we said if it is, we took the not operand of that value, whatever that value is, that variable is, then it becomes true. So this is true because we use not. And because this condition is true, we execute this statement, it is not snowing. But if I say instead of this is equal to true now, what will happen? So now this condition is, this variable is true, and this not true is false. So this line will not be executed because the result of this is false. So when I print it, you will get it is not. You don't get anything. It's not snowing. Okay, you don't get it is snowing. All right. If you wanted to say it is snowing, then you will have to have the else statement here to say it is snowing. All right. We can show you that quickly. So you can say either that instead of print it is not snowing. We've done that example before. And then you can say here it is snowing. All right, so that is, it is snowing. So that's the other example of a Boolean, how we can use the not and Boolean variables. So not, whatever the result of your condition will be reversed. Okay, you take the reverse of it. So if it is true, becomes false. If it's false, becomes true. All right, so the next example we're going to do is we're going to talk about the AND operator. All right, so in the presentations again, we had, so this is the AND operators. Okay, it's Boolean values again. Okay, we explained this in details when we talked about the AND operators. So let's talk, let's say let temperature again equal 70. And then we say if temp is greater than or equal to 65 and temp is less than or equal 75. If I can type 5, what do? We're going to say print the temperature or the weather is, the temperature is just right, right? Okay, then we got a problem here because it doesn't like this. It does, oh, we defined that above. Okay, so since we defined it above, you can't redefine it. So I'm just going to make it that way here. We just assign a value to it. Okay, cannot assign because it was let. So here showing you the problems that we can face when you define constants, right? So I need to go in here and change this from let to var. All right, so we can change it down below. So say temp equal 70 if temp is greater than 65 and temp is less than 75, we print the temperature is just right. Else we can do another if statement, and then we can say if the temperature is less than 65, so if it is greater than or equal and it is less than 75, we do this. Else, if it's, this condition is not true, what will happen? We want to check another condition, and this condition says the weather, the temperature, or print it is too cold. I don't know. That depends where you are. It's maybe not too cold. All right. So if this condition is true, if it is not this condition, then we check the next condition. If it is not this condition, then we need to have another condition, or it's up to you, it's optional. So what we do is that we say else. What do we do in here? We say else it is too hot, because if it's not between this range and if it's not below 65, it's gonna be above 75. So, and then we say print it is too hot. And I don't believe that it is true. Print it is too hot. Okay. Now let's test this part and see what will happen. What will happen, it will check 70, and 70 is more than 65 and it's less than 75. So this condition is going to be true. All right, so it will print the temperature is just right. So if we run it, you'll see that the temperature is just right at the end, and we got it here as well. Now, what happened here, if I change this temperature to 60 now, what will happen, it will check this condition, this condition, this condition, it will check this condition is not true, then it goes to the next part of the if statement, which is else if. And then it checks this condition. Is 60 less than 65? Yes, it is. So it will print this and it will skip the last else statement. So now if I run it again, you'll see that at the end, it will say it is too cold. So that's why. Why is that? Because now 60 has met this condition and it failed in these conditions, all right? In the last part, if I make this 80 instead of 70 or 60, it will print and the weather is just too hot. Yeah. So it checks this condition failed, this condition failed, and it goes to the else statement. Now remember with the and statement, we explained this in the presentation, with the and statement, both conditions must be true for the and to work. All right, so this is an and, this condition. So when we had it at 70, this condition was true, and this condition is true again, was and is. So this condition, when we change it to 70, so this becomes true, and this becomes true. So because this is a true and this is a true, so the final result of all of this is true. All right. Now the next example, we're going to take a look at the or operation or operand. Okay, logical operand. Okay, so in this example, so in this one we're talking about the or, again Boolean values, and then let's take a look at this example. So we have var is plugged in, equal false. So this is a Boolean variable. The idea behind this example, we want to see if you can use your laptop or not. So the other variable that we have is battery, has battery power. This is the examples from the PowerPoints, and we say true. And the or statement says, when can you use a laptop or your computer? You can use it if it is plugged in or if you have battery power. So how do we write this? We can say if plugged in is plugged in, or what? Or you have to find, okay, here, or has battery power. All right. What do? We say you can use print, you can use your laptop. Otherwise, else we say, oops, whatever you want to do. Now, in the example that we have in the presentation, they use emoji, and I'll show you how we include emoji here in your presentation. So if you go to edit, if you go to emoji and symbols, and then here you have all your emojis. And then if we want to use this guy in the presentation, you just simply drag it into here. So now that's how this example, how it works, because we're using or means it's more flexible than and, means that if any of these conditions that you have is true, then the result of all this is true. So in this case, it is plugged in is false, but this is true. And because this is true, the result of all of this is true. And then the message you're going to get is that you can use your laptop. So if you run this, you'll see at the bottom, it says you can use your laptop. Now, the only way with a true for an or statement not to become false, if both conditions, all conditions are false. So if I say this is false, what will happen? It will print this emoji here. Okay, so if I run it, you'll see that the temperature is not, the last thing that we got here is this sad face. All right. So we'll change that back to what it was. Okay, the next section that we had in the presentation is the switches statement. So remember, switches statement. Remember, the switches statement is what is it used for? So if you have exclusive conditions that you have many conditions that you want to write it in an exclusive manner, you can use a switch statement much easier and easier to read. So how do we use this switch statement? So if we use again the temperature, we have another, say, number of wheel, the example we had in the presentations, equal to 2. And then we want to check what type of bicycle or tricycle, what type of vehicles that you're using here, right? So we have the number, and then we're going to do it based on the number of wheels. So if the number of wheels is 0, that means it's kind of strange to have a vehicle without any number of wheels. But if you have 2 or one wheel, that makes me a unicycle. If it is 2, it's bicycle, and so forth. So how do you do a switch statement? You say switch, then the variable that you want to compare. And in this case, the variable that we want to compare is the number of wheels. And then you open your if switch statement. And then for each value, you will have a case. So what do you say? You say case, and then you will put the value. So if we had 0 wheels, then we're going to print something is wrong, right? Missing something, right? So we say missing . So that's the first. Switch must be exclusive. All right, we got that. So switch number of wheels. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Do you add the default? Okay, we will add the default case at the end, so that error will disappear. So that at the end, so obviously here you need to have a default statement at the end. So what do we have? And we'll say the next example, I'm just going to copy and paste this and just change the values. Okay. And then Command V, Command V, Command V. All right. So if we have one, you see you got an error saying you can't have the same, this must be exclusive. So you can't have the same condition multiple times in your switches statement. So this is going to be 2, this is going to 1, this is going to be 2, this is going to be 3, and then this is going to be 4. And the last case that we need to include is if it is not any of those. So what do we say? We have a default case. A default means that if all of these fail, then you go to the last statement. And I'll explain these in more details in a minute. There is a lot of wheels. Okay, let me explain this part. So if it is one wheel, what we're going to do, we're going to say here, it is unicycle. We're trying to identify what type of bicycle or cycle that you have, okay? And it is 2 wheels, then it is bicycle because it has 2 wheels. If it is 3 wheels, then it is tricycle. And if it is 4 wheel, then it is quad cycle. And there is an error here because we're missing the quotation. So that is the if, the else statement, the switch statement. So what will happen if we let me just make that all one so it's easier to see it all. If the value of this number of wheels, this is the switch statement, if the values of this number of wheels, if it is 0, then this statement will be printed, missing something. And then it will skip and exit the entire switch statement. It does not check the other conditions. Now, if it is not 0, then it will go to the next case. And it checks, is the number of wheel is 1? If it is 1, then it will print unicycle. Now, the next example, then if this is not true, then it will go to the next one. If it's not true, it goes to the next one. If it is not true, it will go to the next one. And if it is none of these is true, then it will go to the last case. But for now, let's test it and see what happens. If I run this, it will print bicycle at the end. And that's what you see. But if I change this to 0, it will check the first case and say missing something. So if I click on this, and it will say missing something here. If I change this to 4, it will check this, then it check this, then check this, and then check this. And then when it finds 4, then it will print quad cycle. So if I run this again, it will say quad cycle. Now, if I make that 5, 5 is what? 5 is not any of these conditions. So it will skip, it will check this, then this, then this, then this, then this. And then it didn't find any matches here. So it will go to the default case. And that's why we should have a default case at the end. This is like the else of all of them. So now if I run this, you will get, there's a lot of wheels, all right? So that's one example of the switch statement. In the next example of a switch statement, I'm going to show you how we use the ranges and how we're going to use multiple values that you can compare. All right. The example that we had in here is the one with vowels. So let character equal to Z, and we want to check, we need to identify, is this letter is a vowel or it's not a vowel. So you could do that with a traditional if statement, but or you can use a switch statement much easier, because if you want to do it with an if statement, you will have to use a lot of ors, a lot of if conditions. But with this switch statement, it's much easier. So what do you want to do? You say switch again. I can write switch character, and then what you say here, you open your case statement, and then obviously it's going to give you an error. So let's put the default right away. Okay, and then the default is going to say it is not a vowel, right? So we'll say here, we'll just say print something here for now. I'll go back to it in a minute. Okay. So what do we need to do? We need to say case what? Is it an A? Or is it an E? Or is it an I? Or is it an O? Or is it U? So you can see how this becomes much easier than having to write or this, if character equal to A, or character equal to B, or character equal, E, or character equal to I, or character equal O. So with a switch statement, you can do it in one line. So what are we going to say in here? In this case, we're going to say print. The character is, this character is vowel. Is a vowel. All right. Else, if it's none of those, what do? We say this character is not a vowel. All right, and then that's it. So what will happen now? Z or Z, depends what you said, Z is not any of those. It's not an A, it's not an E, it's not an I, it's not an O, it's not an O, a U. So it will not match any of those. So it will go to the next step and it will say this letter is not a vowel. Now, if I change this to any of those letters, if I make it an O, then it will print this letter is a vowel. Okay, or this character is a vowel. Okay, so that is another example where you can use a switch statement with multiple values. The last switch example that we're going to take a look is that when you can use ranges with an if state with the switch statement. All right, so let's do the last example with the switch statement. So we're going to define distance. So we're going to say let distance equal some value 10. And then we're going to, the purpose of this example to tell you how far are you from your destination, if you're too close, if you're too far, or are you somewhere near. So just an example that explains this part. Okay, so the switch statement is going to go like this, switch, and then it actually gave me a pattern. Well, that's fine, that's nice. You know, you just type in switch and hit enter and it filled the rest with, for you. So we're gonna do distance. What is the first pattern? Here we're gonna do, is it between 0 and 9? So when you do this, this is a range, inclusive range. So if the distance anywhere between 0, including 0 and 9, we want to print something. What we want to print, to say print you're too close. Your destination is too close. Is too close. All right. So that is the first scenario. And if it is the second scenario that we're going to have is that we can say case, if it is between 10, and remember this has to be exclusive. So you can't have 9 there and 9 here. It'll be a problem. And then a 99, then it's a little bit farther. So what are we going to do? We're going to say print your destination is a medium distance, okay? Okay, so if it is between 10 and 99, it will print that. The next case, it will be if it is 100 to 1,000 or 99, then it is far, right? So what we're going to say, you're going to say, let me just copy this guy, so save a little bit of time. And then your destination is far from here. And then the last case, the last default case is your destination is, are you sure you wanted to travel? That's in the example. Are you sure you wanted to travel to your destination because it's too far? Your destination is too far. Anyway, that's enough. So what happens here? So what happens, your distance, now we're checking ranges. So if your distance is between 0 and 9, including those values, this will be printed. Otherwise, it'll go to the next case. Otherwise, it will go to the next case. Otherwise, it will go to the default case. So distance is 10. So it will print your destination is a medium distance from here. So if I run this guy here, it will say your destination is a medium distance from here. Now, if I change this value to 5, or let's make it 9 so you can see the value. So 9 will be included in this because it is the upper limit of this range. So if I run this part, it will say you're too close, your destination is too close. But if I made this 1,000, none of these conditions will be included, will be true. So it will go to the last default case. It says, are you sure you want to travel? It is too far, right? Now, if I don't want to include 9, what can I do? What you can do, you can actually use the last dot. Instead of the last dot, you can use the less than sign. So that means that if it is 0 to 8, 9 is not included. And then you need to be careful with that. So if I say 8 here, it will work. It will say the destination is too close. But if I say 9, none of these will work because this case will fail because 9 is not included, and it's not included in this and not included in this. So you're going to get this erroneous error, right? So you get a bug in your program. So you could say the destination went too far, but that's not true. So you need to be careful with these ranges, when these values, when you put them, all right? That's it for the switch statement. The last thing what we have is the ternary example, and then I'll show you that, and we'll be done for the day. Okay, so the last part is the ternary operator. And in this case, what we're going to do, if you have a condition where you want to assign a value based on a condition, whether it is true or false, you could do it obviously with an if statement, but there is also a nice way of doing it using this ternary operator, okay, which is the question mark. So in the example, we have largest equal, or we defined it as an int. We haven't assigned any value to it. And we want to compare two numbers. So we have a number equal A equals some value, B equal another value. And then we need to check which number is biggest, which number is largest, which is A larger than B or B larger than A, and assign it to the largest variable. So how we do it, we say largest equal. Here where you have your condition, if you say A greater than B, and then you will put the question mark. If A is greater than B, then we assign A to it. Otherwise, we assign B to it, all right? So what does that mean? It means if this condition is true, A will be assigned to largest. If this condition is false, B will be assigned to largest. So if I run this, if you notice here, the largest is 15. Why? Because 15 is greater than 4, and so we take A and assign it to largest. Now, if I change this to 1, and then I run it again, this condition is false. So instead of assigning A to largest, we assign B to largest, which becomes largest now equal 4. So if you do that, you notice that this is 4 now. All right, that is it with the control flows. Here's the examples that we did, all these examples that we did, the if statement, simple if statement. We talked about an if and else statement. We talked about Boolean, assigning Boolean values based on conditions. We talked about the and or. We talked about the if else statement. Here's the or example. We talked about the switch statement, the different versions of the switch statement. And then we talked about finally the ternary operations. Hope you find that useful. And then I promised you we'll take a break in the next sections and do actually some app development, at least getting started with Xcode. All right. I'll see you in the next video.